Gutenberg have used FlightCheck? I think so. See, printing press. Yeah, it looks like he could have used FlightCheck. Looks like he had printing problems. These are all important characters. Here we see the printing press in action for the Declaration of Independence. Here we see it in action to spread the word. Here we see it in the Far East, where they actually invented printing to a degree beforehand. Very interesting. Okay, making this fun video, Johannes Gutenberg, Preflighting and Print, I came across this very interesting fact, actually series of facts, which I never knew. I love history, so this is really cool. Really blessed to be able to visit this with my son this past summer. But I also was here years ago with Patrick Markzwetz, co-founder of Markzware and inventor of Preflighting. So this was really great to be back there. But this research I stumbled upon, I think anyone in the printing or graphic arts business will find very interesting. So I'm just going to give a short overview of it now. I'll make a deeper video on my other channel on this in the future. Okay, so I stumbled upon, okay, so, you know, on the reliefs that you see, I was like, what's depicted there? Some of it was obvious, Declaration of Independence, etc. But some of it wasn't so obvious, like the European panel, which was the first one right below Gutenberg in the statue. Turns out it's very interesting. So there's not much English information available. I found some French information, and basically I used, and this is just so you know, from Suzanne Braun, and I'll leave a link to her PDF, although, you know, this was written maybe a long time ago, I don't know. But anyway, in any event, I used ChatGPT to translate it, just to get a better idea. Now, very interesting, the statue back in the day, I mean, it's still like pretty close to the center where the cathedral is, but back in the day, it was the central square of the city. It was a very prominent place. So this was a huge undertaking. It was a very important statue. It was a very important political statement, as it turns out. One of the main reasons for erecting a statue to Gutenberg was a rivalry between the cities of Strasbourg and Mainz. Everyone that I know, and I always thought it was invented in Mainz, right? In Germany. But regarding the location where Gutenberg made his discovery, Strasbourg claimed to be the place of the discovery of movable type during the printer's stay between 1430 and 1440, with Mainz being only his birthplace, where he returned in 1948 to complete his experimentation. The German city, however, was first to commemorate the man with a monument inaugurated on August 14, 1837. So there you go. First is always, you know, first to market always has the advantage, right? So looks like the Germans won on that one. So really, printing was developed in France. And I have another video I'll put down below. There's a lot of French developments in the early days of printing. Inventors, you know, very interesting things. And on the design side and pigments like blue and all that, anyway, different story. So it was a big political thing. And when they did the inaugural showing of the monument, which you'll read here, the brass plates weren't ready yet, so they did paintings, and people freaked out when they saw the European painting because it featured only Martin Luther there. Martin Luther, you know, typesetted and printed 95 theses, and it was all about the indulgences of the Catholic Church at the time, where you had to, like, you know, you could pay money to get blessed, and you would be cured. If you didn't pay money, yeah, you're out of luck, type of thing. So that's where a lot of the stuff where the split came. And you know, some say the first mass-produced piece was printed on Gutenberg's press by Martin Luther. So it's kind of fitting that he was there on that piece. You know, my father's Protestant, my mother's Catholic, so it didn't really matter to me. I'm a believer, but I don't necessarily need to say I'm a Protestant or a Catholic. I just believe in the Word. But back then, and even still to this day, it's a big thing. But certainly back then. By the way, some of the rumors, or let's say pseudo facts, are covered in a great book called The Justification of Johannes Gutenberg. People ask me what's my favorite book. I often say this one. Look at that, an old article, old print article. And I took a lot of notes back in the day. It was very interesting. And he uses facts to fill in as much of the book as possible. But where there was no facts available, he used creative. He added in some what he thought would be most likely based on the facts known. So some of the stuff we don't really know exactly how it went down, but this is an interesting fact about how it was. The movable type was probably discovered in France, but the everything put together with the printed piece was probably done in Germany. So it's like, you know, they both deserve credit, right? Anyway, the artist, David de Anger, was, of course, just, you know, couldn't believe all of this. It was just a terrible thing. But you see in the final piece, one of the printed pieces says, "And then there was light," from Genesis 1:3, which is very interesting. But the European relief, you'll see here how it looks, or how they're laid out, the people that are finally in there, what you saw in the video here. And if you see that here, what you see is that this is René de Socrates. Yeah, I figured this figure was a printer who didn't pre-flight, didn't use FlightCheck, but he is leaning on the printing press. He does have an interesting symbol here. I wonder what that's all about. But nonetheless, this is de Socrates. This is known as the modern philosopher. He had, in French, said, translated into English, means "I think, therefore I am." So one of the famous quotes, you know. I think he was either thinking too much there, or maybe he did print and not pre-flight. Hard to say. And this is Martin Luther. And right above him is, above is Erasmus, right? So above Martin Luther is Erasmus from Rotterdam, you know, which is real famous here in the Netherlands, historical figure. And next to these three, so de Socrates and the other two, then that was William Shakespeare and a bunch of other well-known people back in the day. I mean, it was really an amazing time. I mean, look at that. So just a cool piece here. And the children down below, where they're obviously benefiting from the printed word, you know, learning and reading. So literacy just, you know, skyrocketed with this invention. Anyway, cool little piece. I just wanted to share that. Once again, I'll go into more detail on this, read the rest about, you know, the American Plate Declaration of Independence, Asia, leaning on, Africa, embraces Africa with a book, by the Europeans distribute the book and spread the good word, etc. And they also abolished slavery back then in Europe and Asia. There's also a panel. So it was very, very interesting. I hope you enjoy the video. And I wonder, leave in the comments, do you think Gutenberg would have used FlightCheck? Would Gutenberg have pre-flighted? I think it's quite obvious. They had some sort of quality control. And if there was a FlightCheck or a pre-flight device available back in the day, I'm sure they were using it. But anyway, I'd like to hear your comments. All right, everybody, take care. David from Markzware, wishing you a fantastic day. Get approved. Get content. Be creative.